Morning everyone, this is William Hemphill and welcome to the workshop. I go by Bill, so you guys can all refer to me as Bill, and I just wanted to take this time to do my first video from inside the workshop myself, the first one I'm doing myself, not being taken of me, and see how this goes. So, I'm a furniture maker. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been doing this for the past 7 years, probably longer if you count weekend projects and such, but 7 years full time. And I build things in kind of an unorthodox fashion compared to some of the other makers out there. I really, I was a union carpenter for a long time, and when I say I was a union carpenter, people always assume you worked with wood or that you built cabinets. I built the facades of large buildings. So with metal studs, I would build what's basically the exterior of a building. My welding experience was really limited to welding metal studs together. My framing experience was quite vast. When you see me do arches and domes and such out of tube steel, I did have quite a bit of experience in large steel shapes. But other than knowing how to read a tape measure and a square, being a carpenter and working on large production jobs doesn't necessarily translate as well as you might think to the workshop. Although I do have these habits and ideas that I picked up through 20 years, probably a little more, of working my way through commercial job sites, such as the Palms Tower in Vegas, the Sky Tower in Vegas, Bank One Ballpark, Phoenix, One Wilshire, Los Angeles, the Heard Museum. Anyway, we could go on and on and on. During the last recession that we were hit with, and here we are again, right? I found carpenter work to be hard to come by, and also I found less meaning in it when I returned to work. I really found that in my off time, I was supplementing my income by doing side jobs, bars, restaurants, and things that needed work and repair to reopen. I really enjoyed this work. I enjoyed the clientele. I enjoyed the people I got to interact with. I definitely enjoyed the food. And so I've kind of transitioned from a carpenter who did some side work to an artisan who makes his living building furniture for bars, restaurants, and my community at large. Right now, I'm working on a project that is going to be shipped to Rhinebeck, New York. Before we discuss that, let's back up a second. I have some ideas on how to build things. I might not have the best tools or techniques that other people may have, or their working knowledge, but I have design ideas and concepts that are interesting and unique to me. When people see my work, they definitely recognize it, because one, my abilities came from a different discipline than a woodworker or a fabricator. They really came from erecting large structures, which doesn't allow the kind of shop time that if I was a race car builder who went into furniture, I'd have a certain aesthetic. If I was a cabinet maker who went into furniture, I'd have a certain aesthetic. But being an exterior framer, lather, drywaller, it didn't really bring those elements to the shop. It brought a whole different set of elements, really just a style of working. And so I work through this style. I also have some unique life experiences that make what I do slightly different than the other people you may or may not be watching. And so let's get started. So I'm a naturalist. I believe that wood is beautiful on its own. I like to work with elemental materials, steel, maybe some copper, maybe some brass. I don't really use epoxies. I don't like plastic. If you look behind me in my workshop, I really try to avoid having plastic in the workshop. Sometimes there are things that plastic cased tools, sometimes things come in little containers. I actually try to avoid buying all of that. I try to have as plastic free an environment as I can and a petrol free environment. My finishes are linseed oil and wax, and for this introductory video, I'm just going to walk you through a project, and then I will try to do step-by-step videos of each process. Now, we don't need each process for every project, but we might want to circle through a few. Okay, so here we go. Whoops, sorry, I'm getting used to this. Forgive me. All right, we have some maple hardwood. It came from the local hardwood supplier. It's quite beautiful. It's spalted maple, and it is, they call it soft maple, but there's nothing soft about any maple. Soft maple is probably as hard as, let's not go there. The first thing I like to do when I start on a plank, let me get myself back in frame. All right, cool. The first thing I like to approach is I use a grinder. When I was a carpenter, I used a grinder a lot. In my steelwork, I use a grinder a lot, so I bring the grinder to woodwork. The first thing I like to do is I like to hit the edge all the way around. As you can see there, square corners splinter in ways that round corners do not. So the first thing I do is I go through the board and I round off all the edges. Then, once they're all rounded, I sign my W into the bottom. And what that does is it reminds me which side's the top. I generally finish the top to about 220 before I oil it, linseed oil. And then I lightly rub the third coat of linseed oil with some wax. So I only finish the bottom to 150 so that it's smooth, no splinters, but it doesn't have to be polished. You don't finish the bottom because I believe wood will warp if you do. Okay, the second thing I'm going to do is take a belt sander and I'm going to lightly belt sand the top to get any waves, ripples, or imperfections out. Third step, paddle sander, 100 grit. Then again, flattening, smoothing, and getting the sandpaper marks from the 80 grit belt sander out of there. Then I'll work through the rest of the grits with the palm sander, or the paddle, third sheet paddle, working it down from 100 to 150 to 220. If you get too much smoother, in my opinion, if you get too much smoother than 220 grit, what will happen is it doesn't want to take the oil. And the point is to get the oil into the wood. During the summer in Phoenix, I don't heat the oil. During the winter in Phoenix, I do. I get it a little warm. Okay, so then the next step to the process will be the base. This is a bookshelf. It's going to have steel sides, and it's going to be 7 feet tall by 7 feet wide. To attach the steel to the wood, I'm going to use brass through rods. I'm going to thread the end of this little brass, and I'm going to slide it right through there, and then I'm going to use bolts to hold it together. The legs will have some sort of adjuster. And that is the project for this week. So I will be checking in step by step on the project, as well as giving you little tidbits of my worldview, my ideas of how things work, and how we can build things. My style might be unique. I might not have the training or techniques that other people do. And if that's what you're looking for, there's lots of YouTube videos available. What I have is a workshop. It's a creative space. I come here. I feel the energy of the person I'm working with. I feel the energy of the material I'm working with, and I try to create through that. I don't necessarily force things to be things they're not. I don't force perfectionism onto the material. I just allow it to be what it is and represent who I am. Anyway, thank you for your time. This is my first video. We will try to work our way through step by step this project throughout the week, and then the final piece being Friday. Thank you for your time. Have a lovely day.